The logic was basically, we know if we can get these shots, it'll make sense. Everything else is extra. The short was made before we shot it. I had never seen anything I have made play to an audience, a live audience of 250 people. And I understand why Hollywood and show business exists, because that is so addictive. You just got to look at Zach, Psychic Pebbles. He was 15 when he made his first cartoon on you guys, at least from what I remember. Yeah.
That's like Psychic Granule. He wasn't even like old enough and large enough to be a pebble yet.
Okay, I have a really important question at this point. When are you disappointed, Hans? Because it sounds like that is an impossibility for you.
Everybody thinks I'm Dutch because of my name, and I don't blame them, but there's a story behind it.
So what you're saying is you're basically Dutch.
Damn you! Screw you! I'm not Dutch. Did you see my banner? I put a lot of effort in that.
Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. It is TCU night, Wednesday night. We are live on Discord. Like always, I am Kevin Lieber, and with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, and it's been a week of shirt shipping. Let us know when you get them. Show us on Twitter. You're gonna like these. They're as soft as we've said. We can't say anything more about them at this point. We've said everything. Now you need to get them. Take all your clothes off, because you don't want pants on the first time you try this shirt on. You just want to feel one thing, and it's this shirt. So strip down 100%, put the shirt on, and let us know how it goes.
Yeah. And if there's any way you could like bottle the smell of you with the shirt and you can mail that to us, I don't know. There are a lot of options. There are a lot of things that I'm open to, but for the most part, we're extremely excited to finally get these shirts to you, and also really serious about you sending us some pictures. They don't have to be ridiculous and funny, although that would be preferred. Just show us that you got it and that you're excited about it, because we are excited to get those to you finally. And if you haven't ordered, just go onto Twitter. It's a pinned tweet. You can get the link there. You can get the link in the description. There are some shirts still left, so make sure you get them while you can. But now we have to get to our guest.
We do have a guest, and look, we're well over 100 episodes in now, and one thing we know is that you always want to know the something. The comedian's comedian, the guitar player's guitar player, the people who actually do a thing respect. Honestly, one of the best things about talking to so many artists and YouTubers and musicians, people like that, is that we get to find out who they like. And it's rarely the people with a billion views. We talked about this with Doplex. He's one of those guys where everybody respects the hell out of him and he makes great content, but Susan's algorithm is holding his diamond play button hostage. Well, we got one of those guys today. If you've been a regular at Newgrounds over the last 15 years, you very likely know Hans van Harken. But it's tough to tell exactly which something he is, because he does a few things extremely well. He's popped off short animations like Mickey's Surprise. The link for that is below. I can't really describe it without giving away that surprise, but we can say that Minnie and Goofy are caught behaving badly. He's put together several collaborations that are watchable and rewatchable a decade later. One of these things that's really cool is the short series Joy. It predicted and lampooned a few societal problems so well that it would make Nostradamus blush. Hans has traveled artistically in circles that include Psychic Pebbles, Oni, Tom Fulp, and he shows appreciation to them in the credits of his latest live-action project, Mutt and Chopps. And it's amazing. Two men traverse a post-apocalyptic year 2400 with a mashup of steampunk and Mad Max and Charlie Chaplin with a dusting of spaghetti western. The story is great. It's cinematically stunning. The score is expertly and intricately applied. There's just nothing else like it on YouTube. That'll be in the description as well. But he's probably very wrong about an apocalypse being in 2400 when it's far more likely to be closer to, say, 2024. So Hans, when the big one hits, when society finally collapses, what's your plan?
Take it day by day. That was kind of the premise of Mutt and Chopps. If these two idiots can survive, maybe it won't be so bad. The apocalypse.
Yeah, they did just kind of bounce around like pinballs, kind of running into what they ran into, right?
Yeah, I think we can't underestimate the tenacity of human existence. It'll get through like the worst of it.
I got a serious like old school comedy vibe from Mutt and Chopps. I watched the whole series, and you know, I was thinking more like Looney Tunes meets Laurel and Hardy, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Were those kind of the inspirations you were going for, or what?
Yeah. So like kind of the way I approached it, right, was first of all, Carlos, who plays Chops, was my roommate at the time, and he came up with the idea of like, hey, we should shoot something, because he's a working actor, and I was like directing stuff, and he was like, how come we haven't acted in something together? So he kind of like said, what if we set something in the apocalypse? And that's when everything clicked. I was like, wait a minute, this is during the drought in LA that had been going on, or in California that had been going on for like 8 years, I think. Mm-hmm. So I was like, all I got to make is 2 costumes, and we have the set made for us. And then me and Chase came up with the idea of, if we turn the sky green, it's all going to look apocalyptic. So as long as we point the camera and the sky's green, then it's going to look like a toxic, you know? So when I approached the project, the philosophy was, okay, 2 guys and a location. And that's when I realized this is how films started. Like Laurel and Hardy, or even Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. That was just like 2 guys with a camera, no sound, and they went. We did all the sound in post, actually. I don't know if you knew that, because we wanted to shoot guerrilla style.
I could tell that. Yeah, you could tell. But it adds to the charm to me, and it adds to the style. I really liked how
it's
like
that
yet
worked. Another layer to like craft, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like another layer of design is the sound, right? Like we because we had to put it all in, we were like thinking of it like, ooh, when he goes into the bush, should there be like crunchy sounds, or, you know, we made all that later. It kind of makes it enhances it, makes it like this side of like hyper reality. Yeah.
And kind of like a live action cartoon to me, because obviously cartoons, you're not recording a whole lot of on-set
no,
sound
not at all, unless you're a
fantastic
Mr. Fox. But yeah, no, yeah, I know what you mean, exactly. But you know what's funny? People always say it's very cartoony, and that is 100% true. But if you really look at it historically, cartoons were inspired by Charlie Chaplin and by Buster Keaton. Like, cartoons are doing an homage to, before cartoons existed, which I would call modern clowns, you know? So that's how we approached our characters too with Mutt and Chopps. It's like, well, let's just turn ourselves into like these clowns, but like in the apocalypse, and give it like a what do you call it? A bohemian vibe.
Yeah. How was shooting in the desert? That seems miserable and hot and awful and getting sand everywhere. Longtime listeners of The Create Unknown know how I feel about sand.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. Has sand haunted you too?
Not a big fan.
Yeah, no, especially when you're wearing a thick 1960s wool turtleneck and a fur cape. And then Chopps was wearing the raincoat and the leather flight cap. So yeah, it was pretty hot. But that was what the cool thing was. We didn't have to act like we were hot. That was already built into our performance. So like that level of exhaustion and desperation was baked into the performance automatically. And so then all we had to worry about was the personality of the acting, right? Because if you're in a green screen and you're in the desert, you know, you have to imagine, like, you have to add that with your imagination as an actor. But that's what's kind of cool about shooting on location, is you get these things baked into your performance. That's what makes it such a perfect little creative time capsule. Like, you were there, you were actually affected by the elements, and it was baked into the performance authentically, you know? So we checked that off the list.
Well, one thing was not at all authentic. I saw that you thanked sunscreen in the credits. I cannot imagine that in Apocalyptic 2400, you've got a bottle of Banana Boat, you know, that's like scattered around the world like little power-ups. I think you fibbed there.
Oh, you're right. Although when you rub dirt on your skin, like, that also helps.
Well, yeah. I love to get behind, our listeners are interested in creating. They're interested in being animators and being filmmakers and being artists and being musicians. So now that we have a filmmaker on the podcast, I want to get more information about how you made this, because I know from experience that even making a 4-minute short film can be really expensive. It can take a ton of time. You can be pulling a lot of favors from a lot of people doing things for free because of like the fun of the project, or maybe they put it on their resume. I don't know. So could you go into details for us? Because Mutt and Chopps is not like a fly-by-night thing that you slap together. It is incredibly well made from top to bottom.
No, I really honestly, a lot of that I have to say is because the director, I was the producer, like, and you know, came up with the story, how storyboard, but there's a lot of like all of us wore lots of different hats. But I have to say that the director, who also did the color correction and the effects compositing and all that stuff, really made it shine, you know, and the musician, that music just elevates it too. But the way we approached it, are you talking about just basically the logistics of it? Because I kind of borrowed the talents I have from animation in at least the pre-production side of it. Every single shot of Mutt and Chopps was storyboarded before we went. We kind of did I don't know if anybody is fond of watching behind the scenes, but like if you look at the behind the scenes of Edgar Wright movies, what are the things all the actors say is when they get on set, they know exactly what they're getting. All the scenes have been rehearsed, all the shots, you know, everybody knows exactly what they're going to say. And it wasn't like improv, or it wasn't kind of discovered. There were, of course, always room for discoveries once we're on set. Like we storyboarded it one way, but then when we were on set, we had to find the location that would best represent that. And so adjustments were made as we went. But we really knew, like, we wanted to approach this very traditionally, and bringing in a lot of that like pre-production stuff for animation. So going in with a shot list that's in the form of storyboards, you know, things like that. We literally would cross out a shot, like the picture we had. I had a binder. I made these binders, and we would cross out a shot when we had it. So that, because the logic was basically, we know if we can get these shots, it'll make sense. Everything else is extra. And so just going in there with that level of preparation gave us the confidence, so that that's the other thing too. We didn't want to go in there kind of meandering and floundering around, because it was hot, you know,
right?
Like it was really hot. So it's like, we better make every second count, every ounce of daylight count, because we didn't have lights, we didn't have anything. We were literally chasing the sun from shot to shot, you know. So it was like, well, we got to go in there with this like really prepared list. So it's basically like the short was made before we shot it, you know. That would be the example. So in that, I think I was very well practiced in that, because I come from an animation background, and then that's probably why you guys feel like it has that cartoony vibe, because it's operating at the same cylinders. But that was the fun. It's like seeing real life live action people acting like cartoons in these wacky scenarios is what makes it like fun and charming.
But for instance, how long did it take you to storyboard all that out? And then how long did it take you to shoot?
Oh yeah. So Mutt and Chopps kind of like, in the development sense, sort of developed itself. It's like one of those projects where the moment Carlos said, "What if we set in the apocalypse?" like everything kind of started clicking in together in place. Like, oh yeah, and then we could be snake oil salesmen. Oh, we could do that archetype of like, you know, Captain Hook, Mr. Smee, of like Dr. Frankenstein and Igor, like, you know, that classic duo of like the bossy guy and the loyal servant, right?
Yeah.
We were like, okay, we could do that, and it was like, and then we just kind of like all the scenarios, the little gags, kind of just fell in place almost supernaturally.
What was the Rowan Atkinson show, Blackadder and Baldric? Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I love Blackadder. Yeah. That's brilliant.
That's the exact same dynamic as Blackadder and Baldric.
It's a classic archetypal duo, you know, and I love it, you know. And so that was on the pre-production side. All that kind of clicked somehow strangely, magically, naturally, you know. It's one of those, like, Mutt and Chopps is one of those ideas where more than we felt like we came up with it, it's almost like we stumbled into it in the cosmos. You know what I mean? Like, it just kind of fit. And it was like, I think only we could do this. I think this, yeah. And then as far as how many shoot days and stuff, so I had set up a whole production plan. I made the costumes in January of 2018, I think. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, 2018. I made the costumes in January, and then February we started shooting, and all the way until July 1st, which was the premiere. I had actually reserved a whole theater, and we had a premiere with 250 people watching. So then making the episodes was every week, right? We shot a bunch of stuff, and then I'd edit and do sound design and stuff, while then we would like shoot the next stuff. And we basically synchronized this release schedule where every week we would release one of the shorts building up to the 15-minute finale with the new character played by Tomar. And but really, if you compress all the shoot days, we actually only shot for 7 days, 6.5 really, 6 plus one extra day we did on the beach for the finale. Yeah. So when you weave it all together, we ended up doing 6 days of filming, and Yeah, it was intense, but woven throughout 4 months, woven throughout like 3 to 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
I guess so. February, March, April, May, and then June was just like post production. Yeah, yeah.
Huh. So that's the shooting part. What
Mhm.
was the editing workload on that? Like you say, you got these pieces to release one at a time. Um, Once it was shot, how long did it take to get those components together?
Well, it was basically like me getting all the shots we made and setting up the rough cut, then doing picture lock on that so that I could send it to the director, who was then doing the color correction and compositing. While since it was picture locked, then I did all the sound design. Me and my roommate Carlos would go out on a hike and do all the Foley. We'd literally like on my phone, I'd play the video and like walk around and crunch and like do different things. I'd come back, and since that was picture locked while my director's color correcting and doing all the special effects wherever they were needed, I would be doing the sound design. So then when he was finished with the special effects, he'd send me the HD color corrected stuff, and I'd sandwich them together to the sound design I made. And then boom, ready for release. And that would be like one short. And we yeah. And so that we basically, what was also cool is I wove in us learning the characters into the way we shot it. Because I don't know if you noticed, the beginning has no sound. It's just that musical intro, and you have like snippets of adventures with
Right.
Mutt and Chopps. The reason why I did that was because I was like, we don't know what these characters sound like yet. And so I thought, well, if this is going to be visually driven, maybe the voice will come after we have physically discovered the characters. And so I said, let's just go out, have fun shooting these silent scenarios where we don't have to worry about what we sound like, and we just put our body into it, And that's where it was kind of us. That intro was basically us finding the characters. And so by the time we ended up shooting the first short, since we knew how they moved and stuff, the voice came naturally. We didn't have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that
That's really, yeah.
I try to weave in the rehearsal and the preparation into the actual product. Like, so when you watch Mutt and Chopps, it really is kind of like a narrative designed around the process of making it in a way. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's really neat how you describe these things like every shot was storyboarded. You've got this kind of intricate plan for how things should go. And then you say, well, this major component of the character, we're just going to let that develop organically and we'll get what we get. I watched in the first couple minutes, if you're 2 minutes in, you would fully expect that to be, to have no dialogue, to be a silent film, for whatever reason, and then I forget who started talking first, but all of a sudden, you get a voice to match with these guys you spent a few minutes watching and studying. And that was a really unique thing, to be forced to pay attention to what they're doing, how they're doing it, what they look like, how they're engaging with the environment, with each other. And then all of a sudden you hear them. So that worked in a really unique way on the viewer side.
Yeah, no, it could, I think if I remember correctly, the first time we talk is an egg hunt, the first short. And I think my character says, Chops doesn't need to know, or something like that. That was also very intentional that when they first speak, they say each other's names. Because then or else it's like, wait, who's Mutt and who's Chopps,
Right.
I wanted to get that out of the way.
Yeah.
And then, because then Chopps goes, hey, Mutt. And he's like, oh, Chopps. Right? So like, that was very intentional too. And yeah, I guess I never even thought about it the way you just phrased it, but that is interesting. I guess like you get to know the characters first and then you hear them speak. That is a very unique, I was mainly approaching it like this silent intro plays basically like, like a lot of cartoons will start off with like an intro and then the cartoon starts. It's kind of like that, but yeah, you're right. That is an interesting kind of like reversal there where you meet a character visually first. And I wonder what that would have been like for an audience member to hear their voices. Like, would they be like, oh, that feels wrong? Or, oh, that's what they sound like? I do wonder. Yeah.
Well, I hope that our audience is getting a little bit of a picture of how much work and organization goes into this sort of project, because I think that gets lost sometimes when you're watching something like this, where you just, as an audience member, we're kind of like so it's like oversaturated, the amount of great works that we can have access to at any time, that we take for granted, is what I'm trying to say, how much goes into it for even just something like this. It's like, oh yeah, we spent 6 months working on these like 27 minutes worth of content.
Yeah. Also, I think I made a marketing mistake. So I was under the impression of like, okay, I'll start a new channel dedicated to these kind of creative projects, blah, blah, blah. But I think nowadays online, when you want to get like support from an audience, right, to fund or like Patreon or all the different kind of ways people can help, I think I should have leaned more into the angle of like, hey, this is just 3 people making this, because the director did such a good job of making it look so slick and professional. I think most people were like, oh, this is funding itself. It's like, no, dude, I'm in debt. Like, like this really is just us 3 and my pocket, like making this. But it turned out to look so good that I think a lot that might have been lost on some people.
No, well, that was going to be my question. I was talking to Matt about it earlier. I was like, this was not cheap to make. And I was trying to figure out if you did do a Kickstarter to raise funds for it. But it sounds like instead
I had some money saved aside. I usually have money saved aside for passion projects. And this one was one of them, except this one was the most expensive I've done so far. Because it's like there's a lot of little things. Like, I mean, I had to pay for an Airbnb because the one time we did shoot with Tomar, we wanted to stay in the location for 2 days. Another thing is like, I mean, this is gas, Gatorade, beef jerky, all the stuff of sunscreen, all the things we needed. That it adds up, and gas, like those are like really 3-hour road trips. Those are 3-hour road trips, and we were driving a big truck, to have all the props and stuff. So that stuff, they're gas guzzlers, that stuff, and then the most expensive thing was reserving the theater for the premiere, but that was worth it. I had never seen anything I have made play to a live audience of 250 people. And that was unbelievably magical. And I understand why Hollywood and show business exists, because that is like so addictive that like, it was kind of sad that after the pandemic, I was like, man, we can't have more premieres for a while. Because like, I really that was the first time I had ever felt that. And there's nothing quite like watching the thing you've been toiling over, and then you just hear people laughing at the right beats and everything's working. It's like, oh my God, we were like at the verge of tears in the behind the curtain. Also because we had literally just finished the movie while people were still in the lobby waiting for the premiere.
What?
Yeah, it was like an Olympic torch. The director was exporting the final version as people were in the lobby waiting, and I was pretending like, guys, we're just doing some sound.
Oh my God,
some sound stuff. Meanwhile, I'm like, I go behind the curtain. I'm like, how's the movie? I'm almost done. I'm running over there. And it was like an Olympic torch. He came in, boom. All right, everybody, come on in. Movie's done. We really, really made it. We like Indiana Jones when he goes to the door and pulls his hat through. It was like that. We barely made it. Yeah, it was quite amazing. Yeah.
How much does renting a theater cost?
Well, that one was basically my budget, like almost my entire budget. Again, that was like $1,600.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
I mean, I guess it must range depending on what the theater is.
Yeah. I was in Burbank. I was in Burbank, California. So
that was $1,600. Your budget for what you made, what I watched then. So this is like the 23-minute cut, the theatrical cut, something like that, right?
Yeah.
You're telling me that was $1,600?
$2,000 basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Still, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Like when you
and that's everything.
Just even like the color correction is lights out better than everything I'm used to seeing. And when Kevin and I started talking about it, the first thing that he brought up was how well the score fit. Like that stuff is not easy to do, and it's sure not at all cheap. And so when I look at a thing like that and think, okay, this happened for like $82 per minute, it's absolutely mind-blowing.
I mean, that's just the magic of talent, man. Like the musician is an incredibly talented guy. He's in the Navy, right? And I've known him for years. He's made a lot. I think he made the music for Starbarians, Happy Harry's cartoon.
Oh wow!
Yeah. He also made the soundtrack for a game I had made a while ago called Ace Pilot. But we've known each other for a while. He's in the Navy, and he's in the Navy band in Italy, in the fort in Italy. I forget the one it's called, but anyway, he's just a really talented guy, and he's been making like orchestral music on his computer for a long time. And he told me he was excited about this one because it's normally that he's asked to make like big sweeping epic scores, and this was more like kind of, again, this like bohemian gypsy kind of like music, like with a bit of that polka pluck, So yeah, he's just really talented. And then Chase, that guy's brilliant, man. He's like he's just super like tech savvy, creative, just visual wizard, man. That guy, he can make anything. Like one of the project we're working on right now, or we finished. It's coming out soon, but it's speaking of Newgrounds, there's the Madness game coming out, and we made a live action commercial for the new Madness game. So we made like this sort of really stylized, kind of like Sin City kind of looking thing for the upcoming game. And we shot that in this empty room next to the washing machines of his apartment. And he just turned this into this, like there's gun racks on the wall and neon lights, so just all on the computer. The guy's a visual wizard, man. Yeah, we're really excited to release that one because that was our next creative effort together. That coming off of Mutt and Chopps. Because after we met Mutt and Chopps, the guys who were making the game were like, "Hey, you guys want to make a live action Madness commercial?" And we were like, "Hell yeah!" Me and Chase's friendship when we were teenagers on Newgrounds was sort of based on dreaming of a live action Madness world. Because we always thought that series, this little action series of these characters fighting, would make a cool universe for a movie. So we ended up getting to do that off the back of Mutt and Chopps. So that's cool.
Did you meet these collaborators through Newgrounds?
Most of them, yeah. And Newgrounds to me, so I grew up moving around my whole life, and I've lived in like 3 different countries. But the one consistent element as I moved was Newgrounds, because no matter where I'd be, on the internet, I'd have my Newgrounds friends. And so I've made a lot of connections and friendships and collaborators over the years. And I guess besides Carlos, I think everyone I've mentioned, yeah, I've met all on Newgrounds. It's I consider Newgrounds to basically be my art school. You go to art school, you make connections, and there's like the fraternity of the people who know each other and working on projects in school. That's what Newgrounds was to me in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Well, that was something I was going to ask about, because it does seem like Newgrounds is this weird breeding ground, for lack of a better term, or a petri dish, I guess, of like hyper talented weirdos that seriously have a unique artistic visions and make friendships with each other and do crazy projects.
It's I think the most collaborative website community on the internet. And I've always, because there's and you guys had its ups and downs. It always has. We're on its like 12th wind, But there was like a time when Newgrounds was kind of suffering, and I remember telling Tom Folk, like, because he was worried. He's like, "Oh man, there's a lot of people who are Newgrounders who are not like a part of the community anymore." And I said, "Tom, like, you have to understand that Newgrounds is a revolving door. It's for young artists to experiment and explore. It's an art school where the students are the teachers." Like, that's the kind of model. I've even joked to him, like, why don't you, like, just so you stop getting blacklisted, why don't you get some like license for the website, call it an academy, and then anything that's like naked porn is just call it art. Like, I'm saying this more facetiously, but really it's because Newgrounds is a revolving door for new young talent to fully experiment. And that's why there's such like crazy and edgy and weird stuff on there. It's because it's meant for these young, like I did, like everybody did, when you're young and you want to explore your artistic abilities, you gotta bump around and be, explore. And that's just, that's why it is that. It's this, yeah, that's why I call it my academy. Yeah.
Kevin, is there any incubator like that, do you think, at this point, for people who do or want to do YouTube stuff? Because what Hans just described is what a lot of the people who were on YouTube in the early days, when you started, and even before that, who we've talked to, they described it in really similar ways, where it's like, hey, everybody's playing around with their stuff here and figuring out what they like to do and what people like. And as the platform changes a little bit, they change a little bit. Is there any element of that still left on YouTube?
I don't think so. On YouTube, not really. I mean, maybe in pockets, like maybe microspheres, perhaps. But
sure,
like you said, the early days of YouTube, it was like what Hans is describing, where kind of like everybody sort of knew each other, because it wasn't that many people trying to do this stuff.
Exactly, I think that's because of scale. Because it started small. Right? Yeah. But I'd have to say I think the key ingredient for the reason why Newgrounds continues to be this way, rather than kind of bloating out of proportion, is I think actually Tom is more clever than we all give him credit for. I think the design choices of the website foster a certain kind of community. Here's an example. The reason why I get the best feedback on a Newgrounds cartoon is because when you leave a comment on a video, you only get to put one, and so you make it count. And so that's why you have, right? Under our YouTube videos, you have these peanut gallery of discussions and arguments that are almost not even related to the video. So something about like those little small choices, I think, are what kind of fosters that kind of community in Newgrounds, and the reason why it's persisted. Those, I think people, when they design websites and stuff, they need to think of it like a place, right? Why am I going to put the lake next to this walkway by the concession stands? Ooh, no, if I put concession stands over here, then the lake's not going to get so piled up. You know, it's like you have to almost imagine your design choices creating a flow of like how the community interacts with itself. And that's why I think Tom was genuinely like clever about it, you know? Like he really just thought, okay, well, what's this going to kind of create? Is this going to create like more collaboration? Should each video be associated to different accounts, or should each video be its own island tied to only one channel? Those kind of things all add up, I think. But that's just my speculation. What do I know?
Well, you know a lot more than I do. I don't know anything about Newgrounds. That comment thing is fascinating to me because I have long opined about how awful the YouTube comments section is, and YouTube has never done anything really to address that or improve that to this day. So
probably
I guess
because
they just
all they're
don't
looking
care.
for is just more and more attention, whatever it is, good
Probably.
quality attention. They just want more and more interaction, more interaction, more interaction. A lot of websites have that philosophy, but it's like, okay, yeah, but more doesn't always mean better.
No.
Yeah.
In fact, it often doesn't. It often means
Yeah,
worse.
I agree.
Yeah. But so what is the career trajectory though from Newgrounds to what? Like how do you graduate Newgrounds, I guess is my question. And do you graduate Newgrounds? And are there like shining examples of people who have started there and then gone someplace else?
I mean, you just got to look at Zach, Psychic Pebbles. Look at where that guy is now. I'm so freaking proud of that motherfucker. I remember I actually met him when he uploaded his very first Newgrounds cartoon, and it was still under judgment. I laughed so fucking hard that I had to like message him, you know. And I remember like to this day fondly, and we actually made friends then. And I remember like in those early days when I think he was 15, I was 19 or something, and I remember him dreaming about having a show one day on TV. And look at him now. It's just, you know, how do you graduate?
He was 15?
He was 15 when he made his first cartoon on Newgrounds, at least from what I remember. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And I was 19 at the time. I think I was going to college at the time.
That's like Psychic Granule. He wasn't like old enough and large enough to be a pebble yet.
Yes, you're right. Grain. Psychic grain. And not even psychic, just good gut grain.
Instinctual grain.
Yeah, but that guy, yeah, he's that's an example, I guess, of a full graduation. I mean, I would say that's even beyond graduation. But there's all kinds of examples. I don't know, and everyone's career is different, right? And it's not about graduating. It's more about, I think, allowing yourself to find which way to grow. Because, right, like you can always have one foot in one place and then be going in a different direction as you're exploring. I mean, maybe I'm just speaking for myself because I consider myself more of like a kind of a Renaissance guy where like I'm pretty good at a few things. Some people are like really specialized with something and they just juggernaut all the way through to a very clear goal. I've been kind of just sort of feeling out different things. Like just before the pandemic, I started getting into a lot of after Mutt and Chopps. I started working on multiple sets as like a production designer and production assistant and all that sort of stuff. And I love the energy and the rhythm of working on a set. Solving problems on the fly in the moment. Like I love that kind of environment. Like you know what it felt like? And sometimes I'll work construction with my brother, and it's I like being able to work at a job where you can scream at people like, hey, hand over the put the thing. Almost like you're working on a ship, right? Like raise the sails. You know, like I love that kind of vibe. You know, I love that.
I love that because I've never heard anybody say that before in my life. That's like the most specific thing to ever like is like, you know what I really like? Yelling at work.
Yeah. Being allowed to raise your voice at your job is so like, it's just such a relief to me, at least.
Shouting to someone at a distance. That's high on my likes list.
Yes. That is when you know you have, for me, a fulfilling job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I mean, the life of an animator.
Work from home is there's nobody to yell at. No, this is the real tragedy about working from home is there's just nobody to yell at. And if you do,
true.
It's like your kids or your dog or something. It's not the same. Yeah. No, you've got to be able to yell at somebody who's being paid to stand there and take the yelling.
Yeah.
That's the critical component is they have to That's got to be the power dynamic. And it's just not the same when it's like a 5-year-old, looking at you in a confused way.
Exactly. And you know what? Maybe yelling is the wrong word. Maybe that's too harsh. I mean, holler.
Hollering.
Holler. You got to be able to holler at your job.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But when I'm watching Mutt and Chopps, and I've talked to, like, for instance, Jake Roper from Vsauce 3, he loves filmmaking. We have had Andrew Bowser on the show, who has a character called Onyx the Fortuitous, and he recently kickstarted a feature-length film for that character for $500,000, which was absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Is that the guy who talks really fast and says, a lot?
Yes.
Yes.
That's exactly who it is.
I love that character. I love that character.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's actually kind of like me. I say, a lot.
Yeah.
I remember actually when I first saw that character, I felt offended.
You thought
I
he was
had to look
ripping you
myself
off?
in the mirror. That's a great character.
But when talking to him, when talking to Jake, when watching what you've done, it just seems like we're on our own when it comes to this sort of thing. And like people, I think, really need to get that message. They need to stop waiting for some opportunity to come along when it comes to filmmaking. Like, the only opportunity is the one that you make for yourself when it comes to that industry.
You have to see it as, you have to see the world as a bunch of possibilities and opportunities. You can't wait for expect the world to change itself to your favor. And I understand where the confusion might come from, right? Where it's like sometimes it does feel like when an opportunity comes that the world is unfolding to your favor, but it's not. You are spotting it. You are noticing it. It's you have to see it as a bunch of opportunities. And it doesn't mean like, because there's the term opportunist, and everyone can be cynical about that. It's not about that. It's about keeping an open mind, knowing what you can do, and being able to act on it when you see it. Because I think bad opportunists are people who will pretend that they can do something and they don't. It's like, you just have to be honest with yourself. Can I do this? Is this the opportunity for me? In the sense of, am I the best thing for this opportunity? Am I going to be able to accomplish this thing? It's the other way around. Somewhere along the line, I remember when I was younger, I made like a switch in the way I saw my art and my work and all that stuff, where I used to think like, oh, this is an extension of me. But the moment I started thinking of my work as, this is something outside of myself that requires my talents, it started to be a little more healthy. It's like, what does it need from me? And if I can't have it, can somebody else help? And then that's when you start being more collaborative. I learned that from working with other artists, where it's like, okay, if I can't do this, who can, right? How can they incorporate that, right? And it's just thinking about it more like it's something outside of yourself is, I think, healthier for any artist. Because then
Hans, are you my dad? Because I feel like
son, am I?
It's the same exact things that he says about art.
Where was your mom back in '81, Kevin?
I don't know. On some military base in some other country. I don't know.
Wait a minute. Are we starting to?
You are my dad. No, man. He always talks about how like the art calls to you, and that an artist is a conduit to the art, and like not really the other way around. Like that's the direction that the art comes in to you, and then you are the conduit that translates it. But it's not this like, I'm a genius and it comes out of my heart or my belly or whatever, and I'm spewing forth this like pure art that no one's ever seen before but needs to. It's not that.
Exactly, because it's like the genius of an artist comes in how well they are able to translate that, right? Like how, and that means being self-aware of what you can and can't do, right? Like being self-aware of your abilities, what you have to offer for it, Like when I say that director is a genius, it's like it's a shorthand for saying, boy, that guy really translated that thing so well that he was working towards, And that's where you just have to it's like art is basically rapid fire problem solving and just making certain choices, right? Like decisions. Like, is this part in the story too slow? Is this joke really like hitting? Is the plot making sense? Like all these are just kind of honest questions you have to have. And I find it's easier to get it thinking of it like, what does this need from me, or
Mhm.
the team or whoever's involved. Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know. I made
That's
decision a long
something.
time ago.
Yeah, that's something that comes with experience on projects and with dealing with your own different ideas. And I think you naturally get this sense that there's a push and pull between you and the art. And sometimes you're in control, and sometimes you're almost in service of that. But is there any way to get that, like 2 years in? Is there any way to get a sense of it, to learn that, to have that skill without without figuring it out like 15 years in?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think I like to also say, like, I remember when I was younger and I was like, oh, if only I was like 25 or 23 or something. Oh, if I had a budget for a movie, I could totally kick ass and make a great movie. It's like, I don't know. Maybe you, Hans, need to go through the gauntlet that you're going through, because once you complete whatever that gauntlet is, and everyone has their own, at the end of that, you'll have built up the skills and will have be prepared for an opportunity like that. I don't believe in this idea of this like winning this lottery and then, oh, I just need to have access to this thing. It's like, no, everyone's going through their own gauntlet. Like, maybe I needed to make Mutt and Chopps before I made that first movie or something like that, And maybe a lot of directors that I respect, their career started like to boom or to really flourish in their 30s or in their 40s. And I'm 31 now. So I don't know. I think everyone's gauntlet is different. You have to just cross the gauntlet. It's like you can't go to the war without going through boot camp. That kind of logic.
This is a little unrelated, but when I see the gurus of a discipline, where the other day on Twitter, somebody posted this AdSense thing from YouTube, the screenshot with the AdSense total very poorly blurred out, to just subtly suggest how much their students are actually crushing it. And I look at that and I'm like, okay, maybe you can have somebody, like, teach somebody to do some of the technical things, some of the even best practices that kind of make a community happy. That's fine. But how do you instill this kind of thing, which is, it seems to me like it's a sort of element that determines whether somebody's going to succeed or fail? Because I know too many people who treat their art projects like, what is it, the abominable snowman that, like, squeezes George, Bugs Bunny, it calls him George and, like, chokes him to death.
Oh yeah.
Like Lenny with the bunny. Yeah, they do that. I'm like, this is not going to work out for you. It doesn't matter how good you are at topic selection or how good you are at tags and description and titles and thumbnails and all that shit. Is there any hope, or do you just have to hope that the stars kind of align with your technical skills, with people liking what you do and getting a kind of maturity along the way?
At the risk of getting like more psychological about this, I do think a lot of that is, how are you defining success? I remember when I was like, when I turned 22, my uncle jokingly, it hurt, but he jokingly said, "You didn't beat Spielberg." And I was like, what? He made his first movie when he was 21 or whatever. And I was like, I could see that as an unsuccess, but it's not an unsuccess. Like, what's your goal? Well, how are you measuring your success? Oh, I want to be a director. To me, I'm successful as long as I continue to make a career out of being creative. So, like, if I'm a production designer, I'm like, hey, I succeeded because now I know what it's like being a production designer, and I got to be on a set. Whether it's an animator, whether it's a voice actor, any little achievement, those are all successes, right? I think that's just more about like how you're framing your finish line. And to me, it's more like it's not really the finish line. It's kind of like all of this accumulates. And maybe I'm just talking for myself because, like I said earlier, I think I'm more of like Renaissance, like I'm a little more scattershot with my talents. So maybe that's how I've coped with it. Right?
I don't
think
think you're alone in this. We've talked to plenty of people who have very similar mindsets, and I think that it serves them well. I mean, I think that especially serves people who continue to work in the industry, continue to work for themselves on creative projects, because times change, you change as a person. Like, just because you love animation for 5 years doesn't mean like the next 5 years that's what you, and maybe you do want to do that forever, but not necessarily. I mean, I can think of plenty of people who started out in animation on YouTube and Newgrounds who haven't touched it in years.
Yeah, there's all kinds of artists and all kinds of careers and all kinds of paths. Like, I never thought I'd be a Let's Player, but I started like 2 weeks ago, and I'm actually kind of liking it. Like, it's been kind of fun.
That's right. You just picked up on Twitch, didn't you? You've been putting some time into that.
Yeah. No, and it's yeah, I kind of like I've basically been using all my free time to like, oh, let's see how this Twitch thing goes, and I've been liking it because I'm working on my kind of hosting skills, my like participating with an audience live. I'd never really done that before, but it's been kind of fun to practice that. Those are new skills, and I remember like, yes, if you talked to Hans 8 years ago and you told him you're going to be Let's Playing, I wouldn't have believed it. I'd be like, that's stupid. Who wants to watch people play video games, you know? But here I am, because it's like, instead of seeing it as a failure, oh, I finally got into Let's Plays, this is a failure because I'm no longer doing. No. I'm scooping up some interesting new skills and aspects to this. And you know what? In this sort of like new digitized age, this is a cool way where people are able to communicate and connect with each other online. Why not? I don't know. I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go, man. Like, and I think that's the best we could all hope for.
Wait. Okay, I have a really important question at this point, listening to your philosophy on all of this stuff.
All right.
When are you disappointed, Hans? Because it sounds like that is an impossibility for you. Are you disappointed by anything?
I'm very disappointed by many things, as you can see probably in my Joy series, which if you want, we could talk about how that has started. No, but what I mean is disappointed. I take disappointments as like a fuel to the fire, right? Where it's like, damn it, if only I did. All right, like let's keep that in mind for the next time to try and not make the same mistake again, you know? So disappointments are more like a kind of a kick in the ass for myself, you know? When am I disappointed? I mean, yeah, I hit lows. I mean, there's of course going to be transitional periods where I'm like, what am I doing? Where am I going? All right, that's over. Is that over? What's the next thing? I mean, this could be the next thing, but that doesn't seem possible. And like, I guess those are, I just see them as points of transition, and they only become your reality if you dwell on them. So it's just important not to dwell too much on that shit, man. Like, it's addicting, right? To dwell on it, because you're in this sort of, again, puzzle solving mode. You're like, you know, but you don't want to hit your head against the wall too hard, like over and over again, because then you're not gonna be able to crawl out of the freaking ditch. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I am disappointed a lot by things, but you know, just like turn that energy, man, and like make it flow into like a fuel or something. You know? Like,
now you're turning into Dew from Mutt and Chopps.
Yes. Yeah. Tomar knocked it out of the park. Like, it's funny because he's a voice actor, right? And he usually makes big voices. And I was like, Tomar, for this one, just be you. just be chill, Tomar.
That's perfect.
Guru Tomar. Mm-hmm.
I have a total curveball question that is very probably short, but it's intriguing to me. Your YouTube banner says, "I'm not Dutch." Why? Why does it say? Why?
We got a question about this.
Oh, yes. Really?
We got we got a question from Chinchilla, who yesterday he made a point to make sure we found out the heritage here, and he posited that, you know, could be Dutch. Yeah.
My banners, I'm not Dutch because everybody thinks I'm Dutch because of my name, and I don't blame them. But there's a story behind that. All right. So my grandfather, right, was an orphan, and he was sort of a victim to, his mom was escaping Nazi Germany. She was a Jewish German, and he was an Ellis Island kid in New York. You know, that's where my dad's side is. And he ended up marrying a Puerto Rican. Very much like the West Side Story, except with all the dancing, because they were like nerdy chemists. But he was adopted by Dutch. So I'm Dutch. My last name's Dutch because he was adopted, not by like heritage, right? So my mom named me Hans. She's Spanish Mexican because they escaped their war, the Civil War in Spain, right? And so she gave me the name Hans because named after Hans Christian Andersen, and to match the Dutch last name, and to make my initials symmetrical, HVH, which I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, so I'm not Dutch. My grandpa was adopted. He was Jewish German. He married a Puerto Rican. My mom is born in Mexico, but of Spanish refugees from the Civil War who escaped in banana boats. One of my mom's dad is Basque, from the Basque country in the north, and then my mom's mom is Catalan, from where like Barcelona is and stuff. Yeah.
So what you're saying is you're basically Dutch.
Damn you! Screw you! I'm not Dutch. Didn't you see my banner? I put a lot of effort in that.
This is when we hear that Discord sound and just a blank screen.
It's gone.
It's out.
Good day, sir. Good day. God. Yeah. So I'm not Dutch. No matter what he says, don't listen to him. Yeah.
Well, what's the future of Mutt and Chopps is what I want to know. And if Mutt and Chopps doesn't have a specific future in your mind, what do you have in mind for your future aside from streaming on Twitch and playing around with that?
Well, as far as Mutt and Chopps goes, I kind of designed it to be this enclosed thing that could expand, right? Even though like there's in case you didn't catch it, there's a bonus post-credit short in one of the videos. It's called Shady Needs. We shot that in the Death Valley Dunes. And that one also was written to be kind of like goodbye, maybe. We'll see you soon. I don't know. Is this the end? Right? So I always imagined I have like outlines for episodes and stuff for like a proper like Netflix series or something like that, like a proper show. And that would be awesome. And I actually recently did do a big pitch round with a bunch of studios. Haven't heard back from them yet. Have a few interested parties, but you never know with these things. So I don't want to like hold anyone's hopes, But I'd like for it to continue. I've also thought like Mutt and Chopps could continue as an animated series, I suppose. Since it's already so cartoony, why not? So that one's just kind of more like I have completed the mission. It exists. It is a self-contained thing that can grow, and that's there waiting for the opportunity to come if one does come. For myself, I'm just going to continue to figure out which way I can continue to make a career out of myself. Like I recently helped Zach. I was a staff writer on Smiling Friends, more just like helping with story structure and stuff, like in that sort of writing room sense. But I really liked being a script doctor. That was really fun. And that sort of job, I feel, can only be continued by recommendation. Like if I was helpful, they can recommend me to somebody else who might need a script doctor. So we'll see if that continues. Another thing too is I'm kind of starting to get involved in the theater groups in my location, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to work as a stagehand or something in theater groups, and see if that goes anywhere. I got a lot of things cooking, and once this Madness commercial, this live action commercial for the Steam game that's coming out, once that releases, hopefully that'll be another little cool live action thing under our belt, and me and Chase could, I don't know, get more eyes on us, more people interested to see where it goes, because there is the possibility of making a second live action Madness commercial that would involve an entire choreographed fight sequence, which would be awesome. And we would love to make like a cool kind of action fight scene with those characters. That would be super exciting. And then as far as like this Let's Play, that's going well. It's kind of this nice thing to do on my free time. It's sort of building in its own thing. It's a cool way to. I've also, a lot of people who have joined the Let's Play have then gone back and discovered some of my old work, and that's always nice, because I always felt kind of the Phantom of the Opera of Newgrounds, where I've been involved in a lot of big stuff, but always kind of behind the curtain, So it's kind of cool to get for some of my work to get more attention. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't know, man. The sky's the limit, I guess. We'll have to see how it unfolds. The world's also changing so much that who the hell knows where things are going to end up.
Yeah.
Do you think that flexibility is kind of critical to staying happy with all of this? I mean, this, I talk to so many people who are on the younger side. They have YouTube channels that are pretty successful. They're doing all right. It's not the kind of thing where they could make a living quite yet, but it's going well. And they get so wrapped up in the specifics of that channel, and this thing that I really thought was going to be a banger is 10 out of 10 in the YouTube studio. And it seems like they stop having the attitude that you've been expressing for an hour. That's like, I want to do fun shit, and I want to make use of my talents, and I want to meet cool people who do things that I don't do. And then we figure out how to do even better stuff together. And there's an excitement to all of that is draining out of their bodies.
That's going to have to be case by case depending on the person, because the personality, the approach, the style, I guess, that I have with what I've been talking about is more the entrepreneur kind of person, right? Like you have to fail 12 businesses to get the one right working, but that means you have to kind of keep trying different stuff. Some people are more, they just boom, focus on one thing and just feed that, and then that grows. That's going to depend on the person. I don't even think it's necessarily like, oh, it's bad that it's draining out of them. Maybe they're discovering they're not an entrepreneur, and that's fine. There's all kinds of artists and all kinds of things. There are people who will make a career out of I knit characters, that everybody loves, and sell them. And that's all they do. And they do a great job, and they love it, and they're happy. And, and then there's some people who are like me, trying different stuff, or So I think I'm just more on the entrepreneurial style of things, and not everybody has to be an entrepreneur. So keep it down, libertarians. All right, like why reel it back a little bit.
No, that's
some people are
totally valid,
specialized.
though. It's okay that the thing that you set out to do is not what you're best at or what you truly enjoy, whatever. Like, it's virtually impossible. It's sort of like when they ask like 6 and 7 year olds, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a kid says a doctor or a lawyer. Well, how many actually become doctors and lawyers? They're 7. They don't know anything. Things change. And that's perfectly normal. You'd understand that a 7-year-old doesn't nail it. But a lot of people who are doing something like YouTube or animation on Newgrounds, like, they may be a whole lot better at producing other people's content than they are at making their own. And it's totally all right
100%.
To make that switch.
Yeah.
And I don't think enough people realize that, maybe you can be a script doctor, and that's actually better than, whatever original thing you're writing.
Yes,
or
it's not about the
this is normal. Yeah.
It's not the spotlight. It's like, that's actually, I think, if we were to diagnose like the Western culture, and one of the biggest sins it's had in the past, half century, is this like obsession with having to be on like the director, the A-list actor, the celebrity, so everybody can't be the star, and that's okay, because there would be no stars. It's like, not everyone can be the captain of the ship, and the captain can't captain a ship without the crew, It's like, you might have like a Let's Player, like a big Let's Player, right? But that Let's Player is nothing without the people editing the funny clips for them or whatever. It's like, all of it kind of works. It's sort of this, like, in the Western world, sort of been fixated on this, like, some people blame the boomers, right? Like, oh, they invented the me generation or whatever. But like, that was kind of like the beginning of this, like, does everybody need to be the goddamn star? No. And that's fine. Like, I don't mind, again, like being a production assistant, and like I'm sitting there on set, and what the director wants something, and I'm trying to sit, okay, how do I get this for him? So then I go on the set and talk to the actors. Oh, can you put that piece of costume over there? Actually, let's repurpose this. And then I go back to the director. How's that looking? Okay, that's looking great. That's fun. Like,
it can be fun to be a cog, and I totally agree with you. Like, some of the most satisfied I've ever been in my life is being a cog. Like, when I was younger, I had a job dishwashing that I loved, just dishwashing at a restaurant where my only responsibilities were get the dishes clean, Kevin.
Yeah.
That was my job. And you know what? I really liked that. Because I took pride in making sure that all the dishes were clean and dried when I organized them and stacked them back. Organize the silverware properly, clean the kitchen at the end of the night really well. Like, you can take pride in jobs that you are supposed to like look down on, but I don't in any way whatsoever. Like, those jobs are critical, and there's no reason not to be proud of yourself for doing them well.
Because
all.
Without that little piece, there's no restaurant.
There's no restaurant. Yeah, the restaurant fails. You have dirty dishes. It's disgusting. You get closed down by the health inspector, and everybody's out of a job. Like, it's kind of important what you're doing.
And to kind of tie this maybe like a little full circle to the previous point I made, is when you start seeing all of this as I'm putting my piece into something that is bigger than myself, that's what makes it fulfilling, and that's what can make you be proud of your job. Like, yeah, I'm providing a critical piece. Or it's like, I love to compare, first because I like pirates, but I like to compare a lot of things I've noticed that, like, to a ship. Ship's not going to sail itself, and it's not going to sail itself without a captain. And the captain can't sail a ship without the crew. And every part of it is integral to getting the ship to sail. It's and
it has
like,
to happen. Not everybody has to be the captain in that scenario.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, think of a parent watching a kid do sports.
Mm-hmm.
They're happy that they've facilitated this kid maybe being great at basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very few parents are like sitting in the stands seething with jealousy because their son is like a Chad point guard and they're not. No, they're happy that they've played a role in somebody else's success. And it's something that we've talked about a few times on this show, because that's the working relationship that Kevin and I have. I'm not on camera. I'm not, no, if I go to something like VidCon, which will happen again in 2027, if we're walking around and nobody runs up to me and they're like, oh, there's the guy that helps out on Vsauce 2. No, that's never, ever going to happen, and nobody, like sings an Elton John song at karaoke and drunkenly says to their friend, like, Bernie Taupin really nailed the lyrics on that one. No, they just say shit about Elton John. And that's completely and totally okay.
Yeah, you don't require
it doesn't matter
that.
Whether,
you don't require that.
You don't have to be a number 2. You can be a number 19, or you can be, a 4,000. You can work at some massive, not too many people know people who work in manufacturing plants so much anymore. But like when we were kids, there was a gun factory just nearby. And the people who worked at the Remington factory, they probably had a machine on the shop floor. I forget what the guys I'm thinking of specifically did, but they had one job at one station, and it was one piece out of thousands that made Remington products. And they were incredibly proud of what they did. And at no point were they pissed off in the break room because they weren't the CEO.
Yeah.
Like, no, I milled these receivers, and like the gun doesn't function without me doing that so well.
Yeah.
These don't come back for repairs because I nailed it. I'm a tiny, tiny piece in this, but it's absolutely critically important. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, that it's okay to switch around. It's okay to support other people, to be in support of other people's ideas. It's healthy.
I think so. I mean, it spares you a lot of insanity, man. Because again, it's kind of like this. I love this. This is kind of awesome how it's all kind of like tying together. Like I said before, success is how you measure it, right? If you're comparing yourself like, oh, but I'm not the CEO yet. Well, then of course you're gonna like be miserable and hate your job. Well, then maybe you have the wrong job, right? Like then maybe find a different path or something. Like, how are you measuring yourself? Are you measuring the satisfaction of like, I'm making an integral piece of all this, or are you comparing yourself to something that isn't compatible with what you're doing? And that's up to each person to find for themselves, because everyone's different. Yeah, that's what I've been kind of learning as I go. Learning all these different skills and different things and different projects, like more and more as I get older. And that's something I've always said is like, ever since I was young, I was like, a lot of people are always like, oh no, I'm getting older. To me, I always see it as, well, I made it this far. And to me, like the point of all this is to just continue to grow and evolve, right? As long as we're alive. And so to me, getting older is growing and evolving. So I actually feel less insecure the older I get. Yeah, it's because I'm more aware of what I'm capable of.
Yeah, well, Matt, you've talked about not on this show. Have we ever talked about the age that most people? Don't be nervous.
Where's this going?
It's going to a perfectly fine place. The misnomer that of like the young genius, where most people who are wildly successful do not become so until they're like around 40, right? Am I getting that wrong?
No, that's absolutely right. So like, especially with something like academics, where it's, kind of a brain-centric job, you can get a basic measurement of output based on, research papers, books, things like that. It's not perfectly quantifiable, but you can get a sense. And people tend not to hit their stride until they're like 40 or so. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. And I sincerely believe, I'm 39 now, I sincerely believe that I have not peaked yet. I don't feel 19 anymore. But I've got a lot of time left, and I have the benefit of having 20 years of perspective and experience and all of that just unlocks things in a way it wouldn't have when I was young. But there's all the stuff about, brain development and all of that. It's one of the accidents of history that the rules we have for the age that you have to be to hold certain political offices, they match up extremely well with what we now know about cognitive science and brain development. So, you can't have a 19-year-old in Congress. Yeah, that somebody in, the 1780s they had a sense of how this worked. And when you were actually ready to handle a thing cognitively without any sense of the science, they had that experience, and that's amazing. But that's the reality is, it's going to be 25, 30, 35, 40 before you can really put all of the pieces together and start doing the things that you set out to do, but also along the way, you unlock all these crazy things that you never saw coming because you didn't have the wherewithal to do it.
You couldn't.
Or
you just couldn't.
Yeah, it wasn't possible. Like in 2005, who was preparing to be on YouTube? Nobody. No. So things pop up. But yeah, it's. I just wish people were a little more comfortable with being patient on that. And I know how hard it is. Like nobody wants to.
Hey, I was 20 as well. I was also 20 once. You have the, I mean, you're also, because it's also like when you're young, you're also filled with this bubbling energy that makes that patience impossible many times. That was what my frustration. Like I look back at a lot of the times when I was younger, I'm like, what were you thinking? And I couldn't think, because it was also that combination of like, you're just filled with such energy that you're also bulldozing a lot. And I think that's why it's fine to make like mistakes, and it's fine to trudge around and bump into stuff, because like you have to, because that is what also gives you the wisdom, that's what gives you the wisdom. Because then you could also have somebody who lives in a vacuum all the way up until they're 40, and then they're still not wise because they never made those mistakes,
Yeah. It's hard because if you talk to somebody who was 20 years old and they were single and they wanted to be in a relationship, and they said, you know what, if it takes me 8 or 9 years to find a boyfriend or girlfriend, you would just be like, number one, what medication are you on that mellows you out like that? And number two, like, how did you get ridiculously mature for your age? It wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't add up. But that's exactly the kind of thing we're saying has to happen on the artistic side. It's like, no, you can be patient and you can gather the experience and then deploy it in weird ways. And it doesn't have to work out at 17.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't. No. Yeah. And there really is no rush. There's no rush. If that's one thing I would tell like younger people now, is like, dude, there is no rush. Because there's a lot of times I just try to rush a lot of things. Like I was saying, like, oh, I want to be a director. I want to make a movie. And they would like create so much stress in my mind. And it's like, no, I've learned, like, I'm going to do whatever that goal I have is when the time comes, when I'm ready for it. And all of this makes me ready for it. Now I feel more confident than ever if I ever got to make a movie, like how to do it. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to revisit this conversation in 15 years and talk about what idiots we were when we were in our 30s. Oh my God, such morons.
Turns
wait
out
till
we
you
don't
hit
peak
50,
till we're 80.
kids. Oh man, peak and then immediately nosedive off the cliff.
Turns out there's no such thing as a peak. We're all fucked.
The final
creation.
Purple dragon.
Get used to it.
Matt, do we have questions from our patrons for Hans?
We do. We got a couple good ones. And I want to start with one from Ben about Mutt and Chopps. What you described really well the timeline, some of the shooting challenges, the limited budget, wrangling all of this talent. What was the biggest hurdle that you encountered through it, and what'd you do about it?
Biggest hurdle. A lot of the big hurdles for Mutt and Chopps were like on one of the critical days of shooting, Chase had a humongous fever. And we were out in the hot desert too. So the guy, he was a trooper, man. He marched on through. I think all the hurdles, because I'm not trying to brag or nothing, but like we really went in there prepared. So all the hurdles were just kind of those peripheral things that would happen,
small things that you could.
Yeah. We're just like, oh my God, the train tracks we're shooting on. We didn't know they were active. Get the stuff off the tracks. Here comes a train, So it was just stuff like, it was the unforeseen things. But that is where I am genuinely proud of our efforts, where we really did come in prepared. And that was a lesson that I learned out of that, where it's like, boy, does it pay to be prepared. Because I've been on shoots where people aren't prepared, and it's a nightmare.
It was what you're saying is it's absolutely worth the time to put all of that in the front end to try to eliminate those hurdles.
Yeah. It really did eliminate the hurdles. Yeah, that is an example of like the hurdles were all the peripheral stuff, and we were ready. It's like having a well-oiled machine, a well-armed force, and then like anything that thwarts, we handled it, man. We handled it. Like honestly, yeah, yeah. I'm very proud of that. That was the best lesson I learned from that project. Preparedness.
Well, speaking of effort, Dan the Latch has one about a specific shot that you can think of where the amount of effort and time it took to make the thing happen was totally disproportionate to how long it appeared in the finished product.
Okay, that's a good question. I would have to say that the robots, the big rusty dead robots in the background in Land of Water.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was I do a voice for a cartoon called Satina, and I do the voice of Dave in that. The producer of that I met because I hired him and his friend to design those 3D robots in Mutt and Chopps. And then later he said, "Hey, we're doing castings for Satina." We had met on Mutt and Chopps, and then yeah, him and his friend. We like while I was editing and stuff, I sent him sketches of how I want the robots to look, and they developed the crap out of that. And they only appear in this movie for like 10 seconds total. But they worked out really cool because I think they add like an air of mystery to the world. Like, whoa, giant robots, like what would the world look like before it blew up? How did the world blow up? So I thought that was like, even though we put a lot of effort into the design of that and it was only there for 10 seconds, I thought it like really enriched the scope of the world. Because really it's just a desert and two dudes basically. And then those little details, right? Like the broken
Lighthouse?
Yeah, of the dried up basin, right? Those little like details like enrich this like otherwise very empty world. And the robots were, I think, the best example of that.
Yeah, because you really don't give much of an indication of what happened, of how it got like this.
Yeah, and I do know what happened. And maybe one day, if we get a whole show, we would explore that. Until then, I have a whole world, like, or I have a whole, like, there's like a canon and a logic and a story and to a lot of things. There's a lot of surprises if we ever get a show that you would probably, your jaws would drop. Of like, what? Odie, what do you mean by that? What does that mean? Like, yeah, it's super cool.
This is the Charlton Heston discovering the Statue of Liberty moments.
Yeah, those
scattered
exactly.
throughout.
Exactly. That's a perfect comparison. Yeah.
So you've developed this backstory and canon and all of these things. You get a couple people to help you on things. This is tough to communicate to them. And the next question is about that. How do you communicate the nuances of those ideas to all of these other people who have, talent in their own right that they're trying to match up to this project? What do you do when they're not getting it, when you can't quite communicate to them what your vision is?
I usually take that as a sign that maybe it needs refinement, right? Because to me, when you work on a project, the crew is the first audience, right? When I have an idea for a little like funny scenario and then I pitch it to Carlos or he does it to me or I pitch it to Chase, if it's not quite reading and then we're like, maybe if we storyboard it this way, we then start kind of going to the drawing board. And that's why one of my favorite tools that I always tell artists to get yourself a giant whiteboard, please. Like it just helps your brain. So whenever we would discuss something, it's like, oh, is that not clear? I just quickly like doodle it on the wall or on the whiteboard, and just be like, and if it's not playing out, if it's not communicating, I usually kind of go back to the drawing board and come up with something else. Because like I do think like when you're working as a team together, you are the first audience. Rather than doing this, you don't understand my vision, like I can understand like there's like a certain kind of artist that's very novelistic, like a Quentin Tarantino. But I think even he, when he like shows a script, will be like, oh, is that not registering? Oh, shit. And he probably just goes and like refines the scene. Or he's just very good at doing that with himself, right? Being his own audience member, I guess. I guess I take that as like, if it's to communicate an idea to others, test it, and let it, or be honest and see if it's communicating itself. Because if not, you have to reinterpret it or try something new.
Well, this one's from Baseweight. It's specifically about sound and music. That's what he does. He's very good at it. People who hear the intro that we use on this podcast, he made that. He wants to know how you go about choosing the sound and music for the work that you do. And so let's say a TV show does happen. How do you go about choosing who is going to do that element for you?
Okay, well, in the specific example of Mutt and Chopps, if we ever make a show, I'm gonna get like an Eastern European like gypsy band to make the music for Mutt and Chopps. Yeah, and of course composed by Brian Sadler, ideally, you know. But I want to hear that like I want to hear like kind of mixed with orchestra, like a gypsy band like stuff. That would be the accordion is my favorite instrument. And then as far as like different projects, like how I approach music and sound. I do actually. I'm of the camp that believes that film is 60% sound and 40% visuals. And what I mean by that is like I'm still somebody who believes that the most important or the most critical element of a movie is how it plays visually. But sound has this quality to movies where you could have a movie that looks like crap, but if the sound's good, it's like digestible. But if you have a movie that looks good, but the sound sucks, it's harder to like.
Yeah.
Like I've seen, especially because I was a film teacher, and I would see like different kids, like some of my students, like work. Some of them would look really cool, but the sound was so bad that it was hard to watch. You know, and some of them didn't look that bad, but the sound was. You know what I mean? There's something to sound where I do think it kind of becomes the soul of the movie. And so
my film teacher would do 75-25.
Really?
That's what I was taught.
He says sound's even more important?
75% sound. Yeah, because you have the music, you have the dialogue, and then you have like the ambience.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm sure you can accompany like sound
versus one. Yeah, versus one video. So it's like really 3-1.
That's a very good, that's actually very, very enlightening. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah, that matches up because I do think that's important. So then when I approach a project like with Mutt and Chopps, I was like, this needs to sound like Bohemian Gypsy, like that for Brian. That became the musical soul of that. For Ace Pilot, another project I worked on him. This was like a bombastic space adventure, you know. So he really tapped into that, like James Bond meets The Incredibles meets space, you know, like which I recommend if anybody wants to hear that soundtrack. It's honestly like I just will listen to it sometimes. Just search Ace Pilot Infinity Drifter soundtrack on YouTube. The guy made a masterpiece of a soundtrack because he also made the music for the battles, and it's so cool. It gives me goosebumps. He's really talented, Brian Sadler. Yeah, but I do think that music is the soul. Like music and sound is the soul of a movie.
Well, the last one here is very general, but it's also really one of the most important things. Chinchilla wants to know about what your inspiration has been, and I imagine that's changed over the years. What inspired you at 18 may not be what inspired you this morning, but what got you going, and where is your head at with that now? What do you value?
This is actually a really good question.
It's a deep one. It's hard. You know, it's one of those super simple questions that at the same time is ridiculously hard to answer.
Yeah, well, I think it might be a little long-winded, so bear with me, but I could start with the beginning. When I was a kid, I always had the inclination of drawing and, you know, writing and coming up with little characters and, you know, and all that stuff. But I think my first click of like, oh, wait, this, like, you can do this was as a kid. I remember watching the trailer for Nightmare Before Christmas, and for many years, my mom was like, "Oh no, it's too scary. Don't watch it." But I bugged her long enough so that when I was like 6 or 7 years old, she finally got me the VHS. Little did she know she got me the special edition one. So when I was listening to the music in the credits, and like, this is nice. All of a sudden, at the end of the tape, it said, "And now the making of the Nightmare Before Christmas." And I was like, "What?" So I watched the documentary and I realized they were little puppets, and they moved them one frame at a time and took pictures. And that's when I started doing like stop motion cartoons, you know, because I realized, you can do this, you can move these things, you know. And so I ended up kind of creating an inclination towards animation because I moved around so much and didn't have like a group of friends to work together with, someone holding the camera, someone being in front of the camera. Like since I kept moving so much, I didn't quite had build up that group to do film. I ended up doing animation because I could do it on my own, right? It was like the way I could do it. I could make these sort of ideas come to life. And so I always wanted to make movies, and animation became like my way of making these things. So my inspirations, they shifted as they went, but I've always been inspired by the kinds of directors. I'm not even saying these are like objectively good movies or anything like that, but I liked people like Terry Gilliam, Tim Burton, the ones who would like really use all these like tools and to to really make things you've never seen before. And I think you could see a little bit of the influences of my inspiration for Terry Gilliam for Mutt and Chopps.
Definitely.
Yeah, but I've always liked that. Those kind of, or even when you hear like about what's his name who made the Mighty Mouse show? Ralph Bakshi, is that his name? Like all those kind of like offbeat people who are kind of experimenting and trying new things. I always like when people use every part of the medium to like tell a story and really just almost like but that goes to all kinds of styles too. David Fincher, that motherfucker uses every moment of his movie and calibrates each choice so that it's like it enhances the experience. And then in general, I always just see like, because I think those are my inspirations, and it's easy to then form the goal of, like I was saying earlier, I want to be like one of those people. But where I've kind of found my true inspiration is kind of within inspiration. Like I hope I make things that also inspire others. Like as long as I've like made something and that inspires somebody, I'm passing the tradition on of art. Because art doesn't just, there's dark ages when art is gone, And right now, art exists, and it only exists because we continue to make it, and we continue to inspire, So to me, my metric is like as long as like I make stuff that is like inspiring, that's when it's the like most fulfilling and what my kind of bottom line goal is. So
Kevin, doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like an amazing slogan that I think you came up with?
Oh,
yes.
What is that?
Yes, it sounds like, well, it's how we start every show. Make something mean something. It's the slogan of the Create Unknown. And
I love that.
Really the impetus kind of behind everything that we do with this podcast, the conversations that we have, the people that we choose to talk to, and the questions we choose to ask them. It really is getting kind of drilling down into the center of why are you making this stuff? And it ultimately gets to that point, and it is to find the meaning in that endeavor. So
make something mean something. I'm going to tattoo that on my ass.
That I hope that you do. Yeah.
Can you do make something on one cheek and mean something on the other?
Yes, I will.
And then what happens is you recreate Goatsy with that.
Oh no!
And that becomes the Twitter and YouTube banner for this podcast.
We got so close to finishing an episode without mentioning like piss jugs or Goatsy or Jankum or
Lemon Party.
So close. I was about to wrap it up. Lemon Party, Meat Spin. Like we hadn't mentioned any of that stuff, and you ruined it.
Okay. Meat
right
Spin.
At the
Meat
end.
Spin is kind of hot.
All right. Look, I'm wrapping it up on Meat Spin. Hans, thank you so much for joining. Listen, we talked so much about Mutt and Chopps that I implore every listener to go check it out. It's on Hans Van Harken's YouTube channel. You can watch the entire series in one video.
Mm-hmm.
Watch it while you eat lunch. It's absolutely positively worth it.
May I add a suggestion? I also recommend that you go to the Skel Studio channel, which has behind the scenes, bloopers, outtakes, and all the extra stuff as well.
Check out all of that stuff because
we'll have all the
you may be
up.
Inspired the way that he was inspired by the behind the scenes of Nightmare Before Christmas.
I hope so.
We will have all the links below. Also, check out his new Twitch endeavor. We'll have a link to that as well. Hans, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We'd like to extend a huge thank you and congratulations to the Tots and Dumpster crew who save tiny little lives every single month. A tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders. Linus, our newest. Trevsdead, Boromir, Botdogs, Chinchilla, Isaac, Conrad, James, Andrew, Jeff Davis, Patrick Pister, Baseweight, Monahim, Dojangles, and Zero. And thanks to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Jen Maffasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Risebread, Sean Malone, Ryan, Kamikaze, Maria Marco, Sheep, Tom Videogre, Jelksies, and Dan the Latch. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer Dan Yosua and producer-editor Ben Webster. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme, and to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.